Hello everybody, Marty the Off-Grid Gecko here, and I said I hate doing reviews on stuff, and I kind of do, but that's what people seem to like. And when I get emails and questions and stuff about different parts of my gear and what I'm doing out here, that just, it's like people want to know this stuff. There's no reason for me not to talk about it. I will only be reviewing equipment that I actually like and would endorse. And one of these that might surprise you is this guy right here. This Eccotemp i12. They call it a whole house solution on-demand hot water heater. I don't know if I'd go that far, and I'll get to why in a minute. But I just got out of my shower, and when you're living off-grid, you're building your own house, you can put everything wherever you want. And one of the real advantages of this is you can decide which creature comforts you can live with and which ones you can live without. So one of my creature comforts, because I want to be able to go in town and act like I'm normal sometimes, is having a shower. And it's hard to have a shower without hot water, otherwise it's just no fun, especially in the wintertime. So I picked this guy up. I think I paid about 400 bucks for it. You can find these anywhere from $250 to $450 online right now as of this video. They come with different bits of kit, so some of them will only come with the hot water heater itself and the hardware. Others will come with this nifty little chimney pipe setup, and there's another one that comes with a different pipe setup by a different seller that's a little bit more robust, especially if you have to do like a long run with the exhaust pipe. This comes up and goes literally straight out the wall, out the house, and it looks like a big machine gun just sticking out of the side of my house, basically. So it's kind of cool. So for the setup, basically I got the machine, I got the wall thimble, and I got all this piping to go outside. I just wanted to make sure I had everything in one go. Picked up the gas line at the local hardware store, and I've got this run on a black pipe basically straight through the wall, and on the outside I've got it hooked up to a little 20-pound bottle of propane. So surprisingly though, and I ran the numbers on this just so I can have something I can give you, this little guy's pretty efficient. So if you're taking 10-minute showers, there is, what's my little thing over there say, in a 20-pound bottle of propane, like you'd use for your gas stove or for like an outdoor stove or an outdoor barbecue pit, there is about 400,000 plus 432,000 BTUs of stored energy. Okay, now your average shower is going to take about 10 gallons worth of water, at least mine do, 10 to 15 gallons. And so basically, when you crunch all the numbers, if you're going to go from like 60-degree water temperature outside to 120 degrees in your shower, just say for instance, you're going to get about 90 showers out of this guy before you burn up that bottle of propane. And it holds to that. I mean, a little bottle of propane just seems to last forever. I'm hoping to find a 50 or 100-pound bottle, just something bigger but still manageable, where I can run and get it filled and then bring it back. But that's been on the back burner now for almost a year, and I've had this guy for a little over a year, and I really like it. So it's the owner's operating manual, and there's some questions that I get on Amazon all the time about this. The pressure regulator, I believe I have a 10-inch water column regulator that hooks directly up to my propane bottle. I went to the propane store and I was trying to hook this up like an appliance, so I thought there was some regulator I needed for inside the house, and then I'd have to have a separate one on the bottle, all this stuff. And anyways, the old man at the propane place is like, no, just, he's like, what are you hooking up? And I told him, and then he goes in the back and he comes out with like this little $10 or $15 regulator. He's like, just put this on the end of your line and you'll be fine. Just make sure it's covered up so that it can vent gas if it needs to, blah blah blah, and water doesn't get in there. So I took like a milk jug basically and made a little wraparound kind of thing for it so that water can't get on it, but it's still exposed to the atmosphere, so if it does leak or something, then the gas can vent out. Pretty simple solution, and just a basic hook up here. Check these lines from time to time. If you are not a plumber and you're not used to dealing with gas lines, you probably want to find a buddy who knows something about it, or just hire a professional to come in and rig this up, because you don't want to blow up your house with propane gas, and you don't really want this leaking out either. And then I've got my cold water line, my hot water line, and this setup actually came with these fittings. Actually, it's still hot from my shower. And everything's already set up and pretty much ready to go. So you got a fitting for your gas line, fitting for your cold water, fitting for your hot water. And I've got 2 valves down here, down low, so that when it gets cold outside, I can drain this thing, because this is not rated for, even though it's maybe 75 degrees in my house right now, if it gets below 32 outside, this pipe is so close to the coil that cold air can kind of get in there and freeze that coil up. And this isn't like a big thick coil like this. This is more like the radiator on the front of your car inside of here. It's got little fins and it's very delicate, so you don't want ice getting in there, and it can get in very easily. So on cold nights, take my shower, drain this guy real fast, and then get on with my business. The plumbing situation I've got this set up roughly halfway between my sink in the kitchen and my shower in the bathroom. So if I ever do get around to putting a sink in the bathroom, it'll be right on the other side of this wall. That just keeps all the distances real short, which makes this more efficient, because it doesn't have to push more cold water out of the way to get the hot water to you. So keep that in mind. When I set up the house, it's probably way on the bottom here, but I went ahead and put an outlet here specifically for this purpose, just to power this guy, and that's all this outlet does. And I thought about putting a fridge here too, so this is actually a high power. I think this is a 20 amp outlet running on like a 20 amp fuse. I know it's a bigger, heavier outlet than the rest of the outlets in my house, because I was planning on putting like a little refrigerator over here too, but never did that for various reasons. And overall, I've got to say, I have learned to love this stupid thing. You program it real easy. You just push that, hold the lock button till it beeps, and then you can adjust the temperature to whatever you want the desired output to be. And I basically set this to where my hot water is comfortable for me, which is about 115. And that's all that matters, because when I open a valve in there, I don't want to open and mix it with cold water or do any of that craziness. I just want straight running water. I have a low flow shower and head in there that gets like 1.2 to 1.3 gallons per minute flow. So with my pressure setup that I have, this guy will shut off if it gets below 0.75 gallons per minute. So if you start mixing, I actually have the cold water in the shower. I've got a little regulator on it that's throttled back. So if I want to, I can open that cold water all the way, and this guy should go ahead and keep up. And like, there should be enough hot water pressure running through to keep everything turned on, just in case. But normally I don't mix and match. Just set the temperature to what you want it and go with it. I think this will go up to 140 degrees. Now these are advertised, and it doesn't even say what the maximum flow rate is in here that I can find. It's probably in here somewhere in some obscure passage, but the minimum is 0.75 gallons per minute. And these are sold as, you know, a 4 gallon per minute machine. And this is why I said earlier, it's probably not really a whole total house solution for most people, unless you're like me and you just have a tiny little hut and you've got, you know, you're only using one faucet at a time. Because once this guy gets up to around 3 gallons per minute flow, this is going to start struggling to keep up with heating the water. So the water temperature coming into my house right now is probably in the 40s. Because the tanks are right outside, and they basically, the average temperature for the day is what those tanks sit at. So it comes in here, and I want to crank it up to 115. Well, that's 75 degrees difference in water temperature, and this guy will struggle a little bit to maintain that at 3 gallons a minute. I think I was running it at like 3.5 gallons per minute earlier just to test it, and running flat out, it got up to about 108 degrees and just wouldn't go any higher, and it's just chugging. I didn't measure the exact temperature of the water that's coming in, but you know, you've got that to deal with. So I definitely recommend low flow items, but it's a trade-off, right? Because if it's low flow and you go to mix and match the hot water and the cold water, when you turn that cold water on, some of your pressure is going to be diverted to the cold water, which means less flow going through here. So you can actually turn the cold water to a point where your hot water slows down and this thing just shuts off, and then you get a nice little surprise if you're in the shower when that happens. It will make an annoying beeping sound if the gas runs out while you're in the shower, so you've got about 3 or 4 seconds to shut the water off and start toweling off if you're covered in soap, and then like go out and swap the bottle out. But I do try to keep tabs on my bottles and how full they are. And like if I pick it up and I shake it and I don't hear any swishing, it's time to change that bottle whether or not it's got something left in it or not. And maybe I can do like an outdoor cooking type thing till I run the bottle down. But that's it. I think that's all the specs. The manual that it comes with is pretty awesome. So you can, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, there's enough information here for you to go off of. If you are not, you can hand this to your contractor, your plumber, or your the electricity. You don't need to worry about a standard 110 outlet will work. This thing doesn't draw a lot of electric power. But the guy hooking up your gas line, your water line, the vent pipe, like all of that's pretty, you can hand them this and it's got all the tech specs in it that they need, plus they're going to know your local codes and regulations and stuff. I do want to say one thing on the vent pipe before I stop. This isn't actually mounted directly to the wall like you see in a lot of applications for these. So this little elbow right here, if you mount this directly to the wall, that elbow is going to be going into this thimble, and that means you have to arrange everything that way. And basically this has got to be on here before you mount it, and then you got to fit that in that hole and then get this on the screw, and the screw kind of drops down a little bit, like half an inch, like a picture frame. You know, it's got a big hole and then a little key slot on it that slots onto the screw. So instead of dealing with all that, what I did was I put a 2x6 mounted directly to the wall. And then I mounted this to that 2x6, and I had just barely enough room to put this elbow on and turn it, and then I shot the rest of the pipe in from the other side of this guy. That was after I got the thimble installed and the hole drilled in the wall and all that fun stuff, and attached it up. This thing really doesn't get very hot either, so the thimble's actually probably overkill. Like, you're not going to set your wall on fire with this thing. Still use the thimble, right? But I'm just saying, like, if you have any preconceived notion about that, like, oh, what if it's a little too close to a stud or whatever, there's a minimum distance spec in here. I don't know what it is. It's probably 2 inches. But yeah, this thing, you can actually, I wouldn't like grab hold of it like this, but you can kind of touch it when this thing's in operation for just half a second and it won't burn your hand. I mean, it runs very efficiently. Most of the heat goes into the water, and so the vent pipe's a vent pipe, right? It's just, it is what it is. Anyways, if you are thinking about getting one of these, they're incredibly cheap, and as gimmicky as they look, they actually work quite well. I've never had a problem with this thing leaking. I've never had a coil blown yet, and this is the second winter that I've had it through. You just have to make sure that you drain this sucker. If it's going to get down to the freezing point, they actually recommend in the manual, I think if it goes below 40 outside, you need to get it drained. And that's probably because people like me live up on a hill, so when the thermometer at the weather station says 40, it's actually freezing up here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's a good functional device. I wouldn't use it as a whole house solution, and you're gonna have to mind your water pressure pretty close, because you need that like 0.7, 0.8 gallons of flow, otherwise it's just not going to work. And a bottle of propane right now will last me probably 2 to 3 months or all summer. So when I change the propane bottle next, that propane bottle is probably going to hold me over until the end of summer, because the water outside heats up, and this thing doesn't have to work as hard, so it's basically just spitting out a little flame to heat up the water a little bit, and I'm good to go. And it's been incredibly efficient, and I have to admit, I kind of love this stupid thing. Every time I look at it, I'm like, yeah, that was a good decision. Of all the decisions I made around here that I kind of question sometimes, this was a really good decision. And if this ever goes out on me, I'll probably buy another one in a heartbeat. I believe I've already gotten my 400 bucks out of it. Anyways, that's the review. Feel free to ask questions if there's anything I haven't covered. I can't answer every single question because I am not completely versed in this thing. Like, I get some weird questions from Amazon on this thing that I can't answer, and I'm like, I don't know. Hasn't this already been answered? But yeah, ask any questions you have, and if you're thinking about a hot water solution for your like little cabin lost in the woods, this guy works really well. Oh, one more thing. Do have a pump, because this doesn't work well on a gravity fed system. There is a minimum pressure rating in here, which is not on the front page, but I think it's like 20 psi minimum. My pump puts out 30 to 50 is what the regulator is set for. Works just fine. If you have a gravity fed system, your water tower is going to have to be pretty high up in the air for this thing to kick on and actually work, because you need that pressure. So if you're not planning on having a pump, this is probably not the solution for you, and it might be better to go with something that's like more set up for low pressure systems. I think that's it. Like, subscribe. I'm setting up this new little series of videos basically for gear reviews and stuff that I use around here, and stuff that I can actually endorse and stand behind. I'm not being paid for this. Like, Eccotemp probably has never heard of me, but this is stuff that I like, and I can kind of get behind it. And I'm like, that's, you know, that's a good tool, that's a good this, a good that. I'm not going to recommend anything to you that I don't actually use, and I do encourage you to shop around, get other ideas, and don't necessarily get something just because I have it. And like, get the right thing that you need for your particular application. So these videos are helpful in a certain regard, but at the end of the day, you're the one that's footing the bill for it. You've got to be responsible if anything happens to it. Especially if you're off grid, because this is not like in town where it's, oh, insurance will cover it and this and that and blah blah blah. Like, I don't have insurance, and with this wood stove in here, nobody's going to give me insurance on my house that I built by myself without any electrician or carpenter or anybody coming in here to check me off all my boxes. So everything's a risk, and I take full responsibility for my house. And I suggest you do the same, even if you don't have to. But I'm rambling again, so I'm gonna go. I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe, like, and do all that fun stuff, and come back and visit me.